Hi everyone, my name's Linda Fitzwater. I teach critical theory for fashion promotion and imaging students at Epsom. My course engages with past and current social trends, why they emerged, and how they affect people's lifestyles and consumerism. I'd like to introduce my student Faye, who will be telling you about her wonderful research examining why a political scandal, which happened in the mid 1960s in London, had such a huge impact upon the media's promotion of heterosexuality, celebrity, and the trust the public had in the government.
Hello everybody and welcome to my presentation. So a little bit of background information. I'm a fashion promotion and imaging student, and this was for my fashion theory project where we had to do a presentation around a topic of our choice, and my topic that I chose was the Profumo Affair. I chose to research the Profumo Affair due to the fact that I'm interested in society-based issues which then later link to fashion or communication as a whole, and my specific research through the Profumo Affair has allowed me to understand how newspaper channels and society do inform one another and how issues can be manipulated or communicated through the media as a social or political tool through certain language, exploring why the Profumo Affair was so impactful on 1960s government and people. So the areas I will be discussing are London in the period, for a little bit of context on the sexual undertones of the late 1950s, what the Profumo Affair was, and how the Profumo Affair affected the British government and people in three main areas. And the areas I'm going to consider and talk about are the areas of morality, the areas of national security, and the areas of deceit. To begin, we'll start with London in the period. So Alfred Charles Kinsey, who was a sexologist, visited London in 1955 as part of an international tour. Kinsey was astounded by the sheer amount of sexual activity on public display in the streets bordering onto the West End, which was a gathering place for social elites. The demand for commercial sex in central London was high, which symbolised a permissive society forming out of a repressed one. Sexual behaviour was beginning to become rationalised in a modern, socially beneficial way, which overlaid the prior system of public righteousness. Kinsey's fieldwork also concluded how predominantly privileged men could move across the city and experience its diversity, suggesting that men, significantly powerful men, had more freedom to stray from the moral compass of the righteous society. We now see that the nature of the acts which happened within the Profumo Affair, which was 1961 to 63, began back in the activities of members of elite London society during the 1950s. So figure 1 illustrates permissive male behaviour. It documents men onlooking a commercial sex offer. One is even leaning, he's relaxed. They're not afraid to exhibit their inquiry, they're not tense, they're not discreet, they are forthright, which illustrates their masculine assertiveness and accessibility to sexual outputs and how attainable women are for them in this time. So what was the Profumo Affair? The scandal follows the actions of John Profumo, Secretary of State of War 1960 to 63. Profumo epitomised conservative success. He was wealthy, he was well educated, and had been a wartime brigadier. He had an affair with a lower class 19-year-old model and showgirl called Christine Keeler. Profumo and Keeler became engaged in an illicit 5-week sexual relationship, and at this time, Christine was also sexually involved with Yevgeny Ivanov, a naval attaché at the Russian embassy. Ivanov was an acquaintance of Stephen Ward, who was the man that Keeler lived with. MI5 had been keeping routine surveillance on Ivanov and recognised his routine visits to Keeler and Ward's flat. They further noticed that Profumo was also a frequent visitor. This was recounted to Profumo because of his position, who, assuming that MI5 were aware of his affair, ended the relationship by writing her a letter. It began, "Darling, in great haste and because I can get no reply from your phone." After the breakup, Keeler later sold a highly exaggerated and manipulated version of the story, along with the letter, to the Sunday Pictorial, which overstated the story, implicating a national security breach angle by suggesting that possible information leaks had transpired within the three-way relationship between Keeler, the War Minister, and the Russian attaché. The following day, with the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, at his side, Profumo made a statement asserting that though knowing Keeler, there was no impropriety whatsoever within their relationship, and further said that he would sue any newspapers which published stories of his alleged wrongdoings. So, this brings us to the morality aspect. So, the Times, which was a traditionally conservative newspaper, heightened the morality discussion by declaring, "Everyone has been so busy assuring the public that the affair is not one of morals that it's time to assert that it is." The immorality aspect was not limited to the nature of malpractice of Profumo lying to the House of Commons, but also extended to the affair itself, illustrated by Figure 2 with the headline, "The Man Who Put Sex into Politics," establishing that sex scandals and politics prior to this event had been very rarely so boldly linked, and could be why the media and public interest of the scandal was so heightened. Profumo's affair set the nation rumbling with even more lurid rumours about the sex lives of the rich and powerful. It refocused the spotlight onto the problematic status of men in power and their fluctuating values, how these men, despite their good names and good birth, could participate in equally high and low cultures. The issue of the sexual deviance and governmental deceit was difficult enough, but something that riled the media further was how the acts themselves seemed to be passively ignored by other ranking officials, and henceforth opened inquiry into how deceitful the party could be when ignoring the era's moral compass. Furthermore, the affair exposed falseness in the Victorian-led idea of there being a link between private conscience and public duty, as seen in and summarised by Figure 3 with the heading Society Morals in Turmoil. The national security aspect. So, Britain had just witnessed the espionage case of John Bassel, where a British civil servant had been coerced into spying for the Soviet Union under blackmail, and for many Britons in this time, the Soviet Union embodied evilness and threatened destruction to their way of life. So, of course, it was public outrage, the potentials of having their war minister sharing a mistress with a Soviet spy. Harold Wilson, who was the Labour Party MP at this time, encouraged the national security aspect in debate and gave instruction that security rather than morality would always be the basis for their attacks. It wasn't proven that there was any information leaked between the Profumo-Keeler-Ivanov triangle. However, the spy angle was of massive interest to the media and the Labour Party, which used it to keep the story alive. Despite no known information transpiring, something more damaging was the fact that Profumo, as aforementioned, had been very quickly believed about not having the affair or leaking any information. The conservative class-based solidarity assumed Profumo's innocence as default in both areas, with little inquiry. The Times countered this naivete by stating, "Ministers who have the responsibility of the safety of state in their hands cannot afford to be less than uncharitable at the slightest evidence that the conduct of any one of their colleagues is in question." In Figure 4, the title reads, "Party Girl Denies Report Ivanov Saw A Secrets." The papers often focused on Keeler to explore the national security or spy narrative. Labelling her as a party girl heightens public uncertainty by connecting her to the image of someone who is untrustworthy, facilitating the idea of Keeler being an easy bridge for information to transmit, and makes her denial questionable and somewhat inconclusive, purely on the grounds of who she was and who she was made out to be by the media. The deceit aspect was influenced by Profumo's improper investigation, thought to have been because of who he was, that is, a gentleman, a man imbued with class. The class he represented now appeared in tainted light to be a privileged group who might lie or condemn malpractice to prolong seniority. Illustrated by Figure 5, where the misleading of the House was written as a grave misdemeanour, or Figure 6, where it is described in bold as the big lie, and in the same article, a storm and a political sensation. Not only had Profumo misled the House and been organically believed by the party, but he'd also threatened legal actions if the allegations were discussed in the press, and he'd sued 2 European magazines and won. This sparked massive concern on how corrupt the Conservative Party had the potential to be. These ideas circulated in favour of the Labour Party, and Harold Wilson began to promote the benefits of a government elected by merit rather than by birth. Wilson highlighted the wrongness of the Conservative Party surviving seemingly on the foundations of birth, money, seniority, when their acts had been deceitful and potentially harmful to their country. The scandal henceforth had instantaneous impact on the masculine world of high politics, causing a major crisis in the informal networks of upper-class power and political influence, pushing together many of the anxieties about elite behaviour which had erupted during the previous decade. So to conclude all of this, the Profumo Affair was damaging to early 1960s British government and people as it implicated the Conservative Party with three main offences. The affair was firstly immoral, on the grounds of Profumo's contempt of Parliament and the act of the affair itself, which led to, secondly, the inquisition of matters of Profumo's candour and further of national security, of the potential information leaks between their three-way relationship, and this began thought of the party's deceptiveness due to the blasé attitudes of other members of the party, even Harold Macmillan, the Prime Minister himself, surrounding the War Minister's actions, which was thought to be due to his status as a man who epitomised Conservative success. These offences combined indicated to the British press and public that the Conservative Party was potentially corrupt, drove by the thought that there was a nature of secrecy about them which encouraged them to potentially take measures to conceal matters of public interest. This was not only a moral issue, but a social one, which fed on pre-existing anxieties concerning the behaviour of the elite in British society. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. I enjoyed researching about it. It was a little bit difficult, purely on the grounds that because it's a scandal and because it's a scandal that's so widely talked about. It's got its own film, it's got its own TV show which came out recently, it's got endless articles that some are still being written about today, so it's constantly got new voices talking about it, and it's a lot to do with, I found researching this topic, sifting through what was fact and what was gossip and what actually happened and what was thought to have happened. Yeah, I enjoyed learning about the Profumo Affair, and I hope that in this presentation you enjoyed it too. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Faye, and thank you to everyone viewing. We hope that being guided through this way of researching will prove to be inspiring this summer and in your future projects. If you would like more details, feel free to email me, Linda Fitzwater, lfitzwater@uca.ac.uk. So that's LFITZWATER@uca.ac.uk. Bye.